June, nearly 30 million were under tornado watches from Pennsylvania to Georgia. The National Weather Service said more than 65 million Americans were under extreme heat warnings as the unrelenting heat wave continues. The heat index climbed well into the hundreds in Florida, Louisiana, Texas, California, and others. And in unexpected virtual world news, the video game Fortnite will soon be home to an unofficial Holocaust museum. The virtual building, called the Voices of the Forgotten Museum, will let players walk in its halls to read plaques describing the genocide in Nazi Germany and see photos of resistance fighters. Regular gameplay will be disabled within the space. The organizers are hoping to capture even some of the attention of the game's 70 million monthly users. After the break, new efforts around felon voting rights.
In 1968, Americans were introduced to something new.
This is 60 Minutes. It's a kind of a magazine for television.
5 decades later, 60 Minutes is America's most watched news program.
You believe this is the toughest challenge humanity has ever faced?
Absolutely.
But if you missed the TV broadcast, you can listen to full episodes as a podcast.
That's really clever.
60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS, and available anytime wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Axios Today. I'm Nyla. More than 5 million Americans can't vote because of a felony or, in some states, a misdemeanor. And as we get closer to the 2024 presidential election, voting rights advocates across the country are fighting for change, most recently by proposing federal legislation. Around half of voters would support legislation that guarantees voting rights for all Americans, including those serving or who have served time. That's according to a new survey by Lake Research Partners. Axios senior politics reporter Eugene Scott is here with the big picture. Hi, Eugene.
Hi.
Eugene, first, where do felon voting rights stand in different states across the U.S.?
Well, it's pretty varied. The reality is that there are places like D.C. and Vermont and Maine where you can vote from prison, and then there are states where you permanently lose voting rights once you've been convicted of a specific crime.
And what comes to mind immediately, of course, is Florida, because that got so much attention recently. How have things changed, whether it's in Florida or other states, in the past few years on this issue?
Well, in Florida, a few years ago, voters passed a ballot initiative allowing felons to vote once they serve their time. Then the state legislature, which is pretty Republican controlled, put in place some requirements that felons must meet, such as maybe paying outstanding fines before they were actually able to have the right to vote. Activists have said this has been incredibly confusing, and some individuals thought they had the right to vote when maybe they didn't in fact have that. And Governor Ron DeSantis has in fact arrested some individuals who may have voted believing they could vote, but maybe didn't actually have permission to vote. And so there are some lawsuits happening there and protests coming from both sides of the aisle, actually trying to make sure that all felons have the right to vote and that rules for voting are actually clear and not confusing for them.
Eugene, in Mississippi last week, a federal appeals court ruled that the state stopped enforcing a provision that doesn't allow people convicted of certain felonies to vote. So this ruling supports felon voting rights, but just like in Florida, things still feel pretty unsettled?
Things aren't really clear in these states, and that's why you will continue to see some fighting and efforts to move things in their respective directions up until 2024 from parties on either side of this issue.
And I imagine this confusion is also what's behind a congressional effort to provide some clarity on the federal level. Can you explain what's going on there?
Jasmine Crockett, a congresswoman from Texas, is partnering with Ben Cardin, a senator from Maryland, to advocate for legislation that would make voting rights uniform across the country for felons, regardless of what state they lived in, and make it less confusing for individuals depending on where they live and what they've done and what they hope to do moving forward in the electoral process. It's largely backed at this point, or should I say solely, by Democrats with their efforts in place to get conservatives to sign on.
And what's the status of that? Can you give us a sense of where those proposals are at?
It was introduced just a couple of weeks ago, and so the last conversation I had with aides from one of the lawmakers is that They have reached out to the bipartisan group of lawmakers that really studies this issue, and they're waiting to hear back from them to see if there's going to be any opportunity for some bipartisanship on this issue.
What effect do you think restoring felon voting rights at a national level would have on the 2024 presidential elections?
There's some data showing that when felons do have the right to vote, a significant percentage of them decide to back Democrats. And so it's not a surprise that the effort to restore voting rights to felons is getting more support from liberals. This is an issue that is of urgency to voting rights activists because they see this as perhaps one of the fundamental civil rights issues of our time, how we treat citizens regardless of whether they have served time or not.
Eugene Scott is a senior politics reporter. Thanks, Eugene.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for us today. You can always reach our team by emailing podcasts@axios.com, or you can text me directly at 202-918-4893. I'm Nyla Boodoo. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.
Hi guys, it's Britt, co-host of the podcast Crime Junkie. These days, it seems like there are so many options for true crime content out there, and by now, you've watched or listened to every last one. But afterwards, you probably ask yourself, what now? Or what can I do to help? Well, that's why our podcast was created, because we do true crime content differently. Every Monday, we deep dive into a new case, with the mission of it being more than just another story. We work to advocate for the victims, and in the 5 years since, we've covered over 300 cases for you to listen to and be a part of this change. So, what are you waiting for? Listen and follow Crime Junkie wherever you get your podcasts.
Time for a quick break to talk about McDonald's. Wake up and bagelize. Get your taste buds ready for McDonald's breakfast bagel sandwiches, now just $3, only on the app. Choose from a delicious steak, egg, and cheese bagel, bacon, egg, and cheese bagel, or sausage, egg, and cheese bagel. Just $3 when you order ahead on the app. Hurry and seize this breakfast steal before it's gone. Offer valid 7/17/2023 through 8/13/2023 at participating McDonald's. Valid one time per day or per person or any other limitation. Must opt into rewards.
Sergeant and Mrs. Smith, you're going to love this house.
Is that the type in the kitchen? There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
Hi, park enthusiasts. I'm your host, Delia D'Ambra. And the story I'm going to tell you about
couriers or mules to get their products across the border. And they're sophisticated about who they target for the job. Michael Humphreys is the port director for U.S. Customs and Border Protection in Nogales, Arizona, the same port where Haley tried to cross back from Mexico.
They're looking for somebody we're not going to pay a lot of attention to. They target certain people and they offer them money to drive through. I've been at this for over 36 years. It's been like that forever.
I've seen 20-year-old couriers. I've seen 60-year-old couriers. It's impossible to generalize.
Stephanie Hepford is an assistant U.S. attorney in Tucson who has prosecuted dozens of smuggling cases.
The cartels are smart. They're going to pick couriers that they think are going to be more successful at that point in time. Maybe a middle-aged female is going to be a better option than a 20-year-old male.
Law enforcement officials say the ideal candidate is someone who has legal permission to cross the border and goes back and forth a lot because they won't attract attention from customs officers at the port. In that sense, Haley was not a good candidate.
I don't go to Mexico. That's not something they do. So, yeah, they knew something was up.
The officer asked Haley what she was doing in Mexico.
Because this is your first time coming back into the United States, we need to secondary you. And I already knew, you know, I was caught. I was done. In my heart, I knew that I was doing wrong, you know? So I started freaking out, and I kind of told on myself.
Haley confessed. She was arrested and charged. She pleaded guilty and went to prison. That's when she met lots of women who had carried drugs through the ports. Some of them repeatedly.
I've heard girls talk about, you know, I did it. I had it inside of me, and I'm just like, aren't you lucky? Like, you know, I got caught my first time. People do it over and over again because the money is so good.
Law enforcement officials say there is no shortage of people who are willing to do this work. Again, Adam Gordon, prosecutor in San Diego.
Usually they're in very desperate straits. These are individuals who are not wealthy typically, who are usually not being paid very much. Think of anywhere from, call it $1,000 to $5,000 to drive a vehicle across. A lot of it is driven, unfortunately, by addiction.
Typically, my clients have hit rock bottom.
Jessica Turk is a defense lawyer outside Tucson. She takes on clients who can't afford a private lawyer, mostly drug smuggling and human smuggling cases. Turk says many of her clients are struggling with addiction.
Their drug addiction has put them on the street, or they're living in a shed, or they're living in a car. They need money to fuel an addiction, and this is an opportunity that regularly presents itself to people in this area.
When couriers get caught at the border, it's often their first serious criminal offense. That was the case for Haley. She cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a lighter sentence and served 6 months in prison. But the hardest part, she says, was losing custody of her children.
That one decision that I had made to carry, my ex-sister-in-law had to adopt my kids because I got sentenced and I was in jail. Yeah, that was hard.
Haley has been sober now for 18 months. She has a job, just bought a car, and she gets to see her kids again, though she says it's been hard trying to rebuild their trust.
6 months ago from today, I could tell you my kids didn't really want to be around me. They didn't want to spend the night with me. Today, they're always like, Mom, can we spend another night with you? Mom.
Haley says things could have gone a lot worse, considering how much fentanyl she was carrying inside her body.
That's a lot of pills. I mean, it's enough to kill 1,000 people, right? It was scary. If they would have opened inside of me, I'd be dead. You know, it's a very scary thought. So thoughts I don't like to think about a lot, you know?
In hindsight, Haley says getting caught at the border on her first attempt was actually a good one. Joel Rose, NPR News, Nogales, Arizona.
This is NPR News. Excessive heat can be dangerous, especially for people who are older or have certain chronic illnesses or who work outside.
Heat is the leading cause of death from natural hazards in the United States, and it is set to be an increasing problem.
One program is trying to address this by emailing heat alerts to doctors and nurses so they can advise their most vulnerable patients. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered this afternoon at 4 o'clock until 6:30 with Bill Reinhardt on 91.7 WVXU. Partly cloudy, a slight chance of rain today. It'll get up to about 83. Right now it's 66 in Cincinnati.
Support comes from the Valley Temple, hitting the road for informal Sabbath services in the Reformed Church tradition, Friday, August 11th at Alcove by Matcher in over the Rhine. All families are welcome as they bring the joy and excitement of Valley Temple out into the community. More information is available at valleytemple.com.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. A large section of the southern U.S. is expecting more extreme heat today.
From Texas across the Gulf Coast region into Florida, we've got heat advisories and excessive heat warnings, though. It's really the combination of high temperatures and humidity.
That's meteorologist Mark Chenard at the National Weather Service. Dallas and Houston are expecting afternoon highs topping 100 degrees. Baton Rouge and New Orleans in Louisiana will be in the upper 90s. Strong storms yesterday are blamed for at least 2 deaths, one in Alabama and another in South Carolina. A ballot measure goes before voters in Ohio today. The measure seeks to require a 60% vote to change the state's constitution. Currently, a simple majority is what's required. Karen Kassler with the State House News Bureau in Columbus says the ballot measure precedes one on abortion rights set for November.
Republicans will tell you it's about more than just abortion, that they're worried about keeping out-of-state special interests with a lot of money from buying their way into Ohio's Constitution. But what's interesting in this is that out-of-state money has been coming in on both sides of this issue, and certainly the abortion issue coming up in just a couple of months is one thing that is brought up quite often as this is the reason that this vote is happening now in the middle of summer.
This is NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Marianne Zalesnik. It is Election Day in Ohio. More than 118,000 early votes were reported this past weekend. Joe Ingles reports Issue 1 would require 60% voter approval for future constitutional amendments.
In the last 3 days of early voting, more than 118,000 ballots were cast in person or returned by mail. Since June 23rd, about 696,000 Ohioans have voted early. That's more than the total in the legislative primary last August, and more than twice as many who voted early in the contentious primary for U.S. Senator and Governor in May 2022. It also appears early voting is becoming a more popular option among Ohioans in Republican counties. For instance, in Delaware County, early voting quadrupled over May 2022. Joe Ingles at the Ohio Public Radio Statehouse News Bureau.
Cincinnati Zoo officials say they're disappointed there won't be a property tax increase on the ballot in November. Hamilton County Commissioners voted yesterday to put the zoo levy up for renewal only with no increase. Commissioner Stephanie Summer-Dumas.
As I looked at the recommendation from the consultant, it said that the county should be the payer of last resort. Well, I have to listen to that. He's a consultant, and he's also saying that the zoo can do okay without an increase.
The county's tax levy review committee recommended an increase in a 4-2 vote. Zoo Director Thane Maynard said in a statement they've worked with the committee for 6 months to make the case for an increase. Maynard said, quote, "We're disappointed the commissioners did not listen to the recommendations from the committee that they put in place." More than 3,200 pounds of food waste has been returned to the soil through a composting program at NKU. Sustainability Operations Director Tiffany Budd says the waste came from campus food pantry fuel.
Some of the items that are donated are, food items that have maybe been sitting out somewhere else. They can be already a week or two old by the time they get donated, so they might be moldy. At least now we're able to divert it from landfill, turn it back into soil. Budd says other universities across the country have also started composting programs. Partly cloudy, slight chance of rain today. The high 83. Right now it's 66.
Today's programming is provided
Appalachia is very much housed in region is circular, that we can create more self-sustaining regional economic markets that both advance economic growth and sustainability while also aiding in the preservation and conservation of our natural environments. But on the whole, Central Appalachia's resources and people really fuel the growth of our nation's economy, and we believe that the mountains will play a pivotal role in saving it.
That was Balin Campbell with Invest Appalachia. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's all today from the Ohio Newsroom. We'll talk with you tomorrow.
Support comes from Cincinnati Museum Center, where your wow awaits with 3 museums to explore and an Omnimax theater to take you around the world and beyond the stars. There's always something new to discover. From dinosaurs and flying pigs to astronauts and caves, you can plan your adventure at cincymuseum.org. Tickets at cincymuseum.org.
Today's programming is provided in part in memory of longtime listener Father Ted Cossie on what would have been his 78th birthday.
Support comes from Family Animal Hospital, offering complete veterinary care in a big Victorian house to feel more like a home than a hospital, helping make the experience more comfortable for your pets. Family Animal Hospital is pet-centered, accessible, and takes the time to answer any questions or concerns you may have. More information on Family Animal Hospital's Facebook page.
The ramp from southbound 75 to 5th Street is closed because of an overturned truck on the overpass. That also has the 6th Street viaduct eastbound to 5th Street closed. Southbound 275 before Milford, the right lane blocked by a wreck. Southbound 75 after Shepherd Lane, the right lane blocked by a wreck. There's one eastbound 275 after 71. US 27 north of Lock Road in Pendleton County. There's a wreck there. And race between Bridgetown and Harrison Avenue, Hamilton County. There's a wreck there. A few clouds, a low of 64 tonight. Partly cloudy with a high of 85 on Wednesday with some isolated storms tomorrow afternoon. It's 84 degrees now.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Juana Summers. Time now for My Unsung Hero, our series from the team at Hidden Brain. My Unsung Hero tells the stories of people whose kindness left a lasting impression on someone else. Today's story comes from LaQuista Arena. A few years ago, her 7-year-old son Jackson was diagnosed with autism. Jackson was often overwhelmed by sensory experiences, and haircuts were the worst. He'd get so anxious that he'd start kicking and screaming. Eventually, his mom found a barber named Ree, who over time learned how to stave off Jackson's meltdowns. But one day in early 2022, everything went wrong.
We got caught in traffic, he left his headphones, we hadn't had lunch. It was just like a series of unfortunate events. He was like, no, I don't want to go. I was like, come on, Jackson, stop playing. Like, I got things to do. I'm like, so, like, we usually, I have to say it like 3 times. And this time he refused to get in the seat. And he started running around the shop. And Ree is like, come on, Jackson, man, you know you're my man. Like, she was trying to talk to him. She tried to put the cape on him, and he just had a fit. And she was like, come look in the mirror. I'm going to show you what I'm doing. And he looked, but he still wasn't having it. And I was like, come on, Jackson, I'm getting frustrated. And she's like, no, I got it. So I just sat on the couch. I'm like, she's not going to be able to cut his hair. I'm going to give it 5 minutes. We're going to go get something to eat and go home. Well, next thing you know, I'm looking and she's like cutting his hair. He's standing up. I'm like, wait, she's playing a game with him. She he would wipe it off.
Really?
Just can't believe this, man. The boss man says, son, you got 10 years and she's been gone.
They have their own special relationship, and I think
Rossini, performed by the National Philharmonic with conductor Ricardo Shea.
Music for your heart, mind, and spirit. Classical 90.9 WGBC Cincinnati.
Summertime is far from over. There is live music in beautiful New Richmond, Ohio, on the river every Wednesday night. Here's New Richmond's Bob Williams. You have a real love for New Richmond and a real history there.
We've discovered that music is one great way to bring a community together, bring other people to our community. So a few years back, when our business in the Waterfront District was in trouble, and to bring life back to it, we've discovered that music is a great way of doing that.
Restaurants and bars and shops, and then there's Houserman Park.
Wonderful Houserman Park. It's got to be one of those beautiful views of the Ohio River. It's right smack in the middle of Dora District, which has turned out to be a real success. Our Wednesday evening program we put together has become a real success on what was a midweek quieter evening. We've sort of enlivened it up with lots of good music. On a Wednesday evening in the park, it covers the gamut. We've had everything from blues, jazz, classic rock. It's just amazing the amount of talent that we tap both locally. We've got some wonderful groups in the Richmond area, but also from greater Cincinnati. The likes of Jeff Henry and Macro, Tracy Walker is kind of a mainstay for us. The names that you would certainly recognize are with us on Wednesday evenings. It's from 6 to 8 p.m.
Completely free and open to the public?
It is, and it's a joint effort between Renaissance for Richmond and a local realtor, Howard, on real estate in the village of New Richmond, all working in concert to make for a great evening of music each and every Wednesday. It's a special little town. We're just 10 minutes from Coney Island, River Bend, and Belterra on a 4-lane highway that connects us to downtown Cincinnati in about 20 minutes.
For a link and more information, visit our website, wguc.org/spotlight.
Support comes from Ball & Gaynor. For more than 30 years offering personalized financial planning and an investment philosophy focused on growing clients' income. The goal in a world of uncertainties, delivering peace of mind. Learn more about Ball & Gaynor online at dividendspaydividends.com.
I'm going to throw some classic John Williams in here for you. This is his Midway March from the 1976 movie Midway. On 90.9, this march is performed by the Boston Pops with John Williams himself as conductor.
that got you in a peppy mood to be productive this Tuesday. John Williams conducted the Boston Pops for his own piece, The Midway March, from the movie Midway on WGC.
Support comes from listeners like you and from OHC, a regional expert in the treatment of adult cancers and blood disorders. Be confident in your cancer diagnosis and personalized treatment. When seeking a second opinion, you can choose OHC. For more information, visit ohcare.com.
Franz Josef Haydn's piano trio number 39 is nicknamed the Gypsy because of the Hungarian style of the Rondo third movement. Lightning fast and playful, this trio is performed on 90.9 by pianist Martha Ardrich, violinist Vadim Ripin, and cellist Misha Maisky.
The appeal will be a test. George Chen is managing director in Hong Kong for the consultancy The Asia Group.
So the case will be also viewed by many lawyers, legal professionals as a testament
of how much independent judiciary Hong Kong still has.
If the appellate court upholds the original ruling, the government may take it to the Court of Final Appeal, and possibly even China's legislature to get a favorable ruling. Ho Fung Hong of Johns Hopkins says if the government succeeds, it'll use the injunction to press internet companies like Google, Facebook, and others to remove the song.
If they don't comply, then they will be violating the Hong Kong law and injunction, and their staff and the company will be in legal trouble.
But if they do comply, he says, they may come under pressure outside of China for helping the Hong Kong government crack down on free speech. John Ruich, NPR News.
Oscar-winning actor Jamie Lee Curtis is on strike against the Hollywood studios as a member of the union SAG-AFTRA, but she has a separate career as an author, and today a graphic novel she co-wrote goes on sale. NPR's Mandalit Del Barco reports.
Jamie Lee Curtis has written a number of best-selling books for children about feeling silly, being patient, and liking yourself, but her new book, Mother Nature, is more in line with the horror movies she's known for. The Scream Queen co-wrote an eco-horror screenplay, which New Yorker illustrator Carl Stevens adapted into a graphic novel.
I went through a lot of cadmium red.
Because there's a lot of blood. There will be blood in this book.
Yeah.
During the recent Comic-Con in San Diego, fans got to see a video with some of the novel's images set to music. The story is set in New Mexico, where an energy corporation is fracking water under land leased from a Native American woman. Her daughter Nova tries to sabotage the water project and is struck by lightning. Curtis says Nova then becomes the spirit of Mother Nature, who takes revenge for being destroyed.
I had an idea of every gruesome way that Mother Nature could kill people. You know, black ice storms, tornadoes, burning them up with extreme heat, hailstones to the head, stones to the head. What a way to go.
It isn't nice to mess with Mother Nature, and in one key scene, an earthquake shakes loose the head of an oil drill, killing Nova's father, who worked for the energy company. Curtis says that
394.
I mean, I don't think it will today. Add an extra cup of coffee, I think we're good.
I love it. Sleepy Jean. Okay, it also makes me think of the monkeys, of course.
Yes, there's definitely a nod to 1960s culture.
Love it. I love it. So your album draws on your family history quite a bit, and it's really an interesting history that I wanted you to outline for our listeners if you could. So your family fled Uganda back in the 70s.
Yes. So I was born to on my dad's side, you're Persian, which is a fancy way of saying ethnically Persian people who would have fled what's now known as Iran and Iraq in the 8th or 9th century, landed in India, adopted Indian customs, but kept their religion, which is Zoroastrianism. And then my grandparents both ended up in Uganda, where they met, started a family, and then fled when Idi Amin came into power in the 70s, and there was an Asian expulsion, I think in 1972. So at that point,
wow. And they left, I'm assuming, under kind of scary circumstances.
Oh, very much so. My grandfather actually, my babaji, that's what I called him. He stayed behind trying to close up shop. He was part owner in the first major bus company in Kampala, the capital.
Oh, wow.
So not only were they fleeing, but he was trying to get money out of the country, try and solidify some stuff. And I think he was actually smuggling people who opposed Idi Amin out of their village to try and keep them safe.
So sort of a political, I guess, rebel, we'll say?
A little bit. I didn't find out about any of that until after he died. And it was kind of just said, oh yeah, remember when he was smuggling people away from Idi Amin? That was crazy.
Like, oh yeah. Sounds like it was a little crazy.
Very much so. My dad remembers the rest of the family getting on a plane to go back to India, and my grandfather staying behind.
And your dad was a little kid at this point?
He would have been 7.
7. Wow, so you learned about this from your father after your grandfather passed?
I think it was a different family member who told us about more of the, I guess, political activism, for lack of a better term. But the stories have always been told. My parents, it was never something that my dad dwelled on, but it was something that was definitely explained to us so that we could understand how good of a life we had in Canada. And develop some gratitude for that.
For sure. So when it comes to your own artistry, how did you end up weaving that family history into what you wanted to create?
It was very subconscious. I didn't realize until somebody actually asked me to explain the lyrics of a song that I wrote that was what I was channeling. I think it's a kind of universal immigrant story to describe fleeing a country of origin and coming to a new home and all of the strife and trauma and sacrifice that comes with that. And these stories bleed into my writing all the time, whether or not I'm aware of it.
Yeah, I'd say. So when you, I guess, was there a moment when you finished the record that you were like, oh, this is what it was about, sort of like retrospectively
very much
understanding?
So. One of the songs, No Tomorrow, very specifically, I knew I was writing about the history, but I didn't realize to what extent until I was going line by line as we were cutting the vocals. I was like, oh wow. I'm really describing my Babaji, my grandmother's experience of leaving her home country. Because she would have been, I think, 40 when they fled, and had only ever lived in Uganda. So she left her home and left a daughter who had passed away behind and never returned.
Wow.
To start a new life for her family, which is just, as I get older, I understand the gravity of that.
What was your father's reaction when he heard the music?
My dad is a man of very few words, so it's not something we've ever openly discussed. But I think my family's ethos is that you honor the sacrifice that my grandparents made to get us here safely and start a new life for them. And anything that does that is A-okay with him.
Wow. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. That's deep. What does it mean to you to be able to do that, just personally?
I mean, I'm incredibly proud of my family's history, and to me it's an honor to get to talk about it and get to, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this program, but
you can say it.
I can say it.
Oh yeah.
My Babaji was a badass. He did incredible things with his life, and I'm proud that I get to talk about that in any capacity.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll send this one out to him. Do you want to introduce the song for us?
This is No Tomorrow by Sleepy Jean. was No Tomorrow by Sleepy Jean. Sending that one out to her apology. Her debut full-length album, Shoot Me in a Dream, is out everywhere now. And that's it for Q Today. Coming up tomorrow on the show, Linda Schuyler. She co-created the wildly successful Degrassi franchise. Linda will tell you how she went from school teacher to TV executive and what it was like when Drake, or as she likes to call him, My Little Aubrey, came in to audition for the show. I'm Talia Schlinger, sitting in for Tom Power. See you next time.
From Ball and Gamer. For more than 30 years, offering personalized financial planning and an investment philosophy focused on growing clients' income. The goal in a world of uncertainties, delivering peace of mind. Learn more about Ball and Gamer online at dividendspaydivvidends.com.
Hey, it's A. Martinez. So you want to be a morning person. Get up without the snooze button, make your bed right away, eat a healthy breakfast. Okay, you're still working. We get it. Go ahead, hit snooze. Morning edition from NPR News will be here for you all morning, whether you make the bed or not. Listen every weekend.
I'm 91.7 WVH. Your host, Marianne Zaleski.
91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUP Oxford. News from Cincinnati Public Radio and NPR.
In theater, you have monologues if it's just one person talking, and for two or more, it's called a dialogue. But then there's unicycles for something of one wheel, and bicycles for two, and in classes, it's a mashup of mono and bi, monocle and bifocals. So why aren't they monocycles and dicycles, and why is there this mono, dial, uni-bi situation?
The world is complicated. Thanks for calling.
Sometimes I imagine punctuation marks as people at a party. Comma. Okay, then what happened? And the colon makes intense eye contact and says, look. And the semicolon hands you their drink and plate so that they can gesture more freely. And the period abruptly says, we're done, let's go.
But we're just getting started. Stick around for Way with Words.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. A federal judge has scheduled a hearing for Friday on the Justice Department's request for a protective order in the January 6 case against former President Donald Trump. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports prosecutors trying to block Trump from revealing evidence collected in the investigation into his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Attorneys for the Justice Department and the former president will have the opportunity to present their arguments before the court on Friday. Lawyers for Trump have requested narrower limits on the protective order, accusing the government of seeking to restrict the former president's First Amendment rights. The DOJ argues that Trump has a habit of speaking publicly about the details of the various legal proceedings he's facing. Those include a barrage of criminal charges in New York City, Florida, and Washington, D.C. Trump could also face an indictment in Georgia for his alleged efforts to overturn his loss there in 2020. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Ohio voters have resoundingly rejected a Republican-backed measure that threatened abortion rights. The proposed measure would have changed the threshold to change the state constitution from a simple majority to 60%. It comes ahead of a potential November ballot question on whether to enshrine abortion rights in Ohio's constitution. Had the GOP-backed measure passed, it would have made it more difficult, if not impossible, for the citizen-backed referendum on protecting abortion rights in the state to move ahead. Incumbent Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves is set to secure the Republican nomination for governor today, setting up what is likely to be an expensive and ugly general election cycle.
Reeves only faces two challengers in Tuesday's primary, but both are political newcomers who have run bare-bones campaigns. Reeves is focusing on the unopposed Democratic candidate, Brandon Presley, cousin of Elvis Presley and North Mississippi's utility regulator.
Brandon Presley and his party are happy to see people
with working-class people and is ignoring the crisis of rural hospital closures in Mississippi. For NPR News, I'm Will Stribling in Jackson.
President Biden traveled to Arizona today to formally announce a national monument designation for Greater Grand Canyon. Biden's declaration covers nearly 1 million acres just outside of Grand Canyon National Park. Representatives of various Arizona tribes were invited to the event. The tribe, along with environmental groups, have advocated for increased protections on the land for decades. Stocks closed lower today. The Dow down 158 points. The Nasdaq fell 110 points. You're listening to NPR. Package shipper UPS is downgrading its earnings forecast for this year, in large part because of a new contract reached with the company's 340,000 unionized workers. UPS says it is lowering full-year revenue expectations by $4 billion due to the tentative deal, along with falling volume. UPS reached a preliminary deal with the Teamsters Union late last month, averting a strike that could have disrupted package shipments for millions of people. Pakistan's interior minister says the country's election may now be delayed until March. The statement comes days after the country's main opposition leader was jailed. Yours Vietnamese.
Pakistanis expect that the Prime Minister will dissolve Parliament this week. That's meant to trigger elections within 90 days. But Interior Minister Rana Sana'ullah told local news outlet Geo that voting could be delayed because officials have to redraw some constituencies based on a recent census. Critics and followers of the opposition party, the PTI, say they're worried the vote will be delayed until the government can be certain of shoring up its vote. That opposition party is led by former Prime Minister Imran Khan. He was sentenced to 3 years jail on Saturday after he was found guilty of not properly declaring gifts he received from dignitaries. Khan has been under pressure since he fell out with Pakistan's most powerful institution, the army. Dia Hadid, NPR News.
Crude oil futures prices, after losing ground for the last several sessions, gained ground today. Oil up 98 cents a barrel to settle at 82.92 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Kauffman Foundation, providing access to opportunities that help people achieve financial stability, upward mobility, and economic prosperity, regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org.
You're listening to Away with Words, the show about language and how we use it. I'm Brett Barrett.
And I'm Martha Barnett. Imagine that all the punctuation marks gave a party. What would that look like? Rachel Herbert asked that. On Twitter, she's an editor in Seattle, Washington. She wrote, "Sometimes I imagine punctuation marks as people at a party. Comma. Okay, then what happened?" And the colon makes intense eye contact and says, "Now look." And the semicolon hands you their drink and plate so that they can gesture more freely. And the period abruptly says, "We're done. Let's go." And I've been thinking about that, like, what would an asterisk be like at a party?
I think it's a person who's constantly surprised. I don't know. It's the person who walks in on their own surprise party.
Or they're like, "Hold on, I'll be right back."
Yeah.
And then I was thinking of Tilda, and you just sit there and like,
Right. Parentheses are two people leaning toward each other, talking intently, ignoring everyone else, right?
Yeah.
The dash is making a run for the back.
Right, maybe the slash is, I don't know, there's another play.
Right. Or they're listening to pork because they've been drinking.
Right. Just one of these things that I think about while I'm writing.
If you have more contributions on what each kind of punctuation would do at a party, hit us up on Twitter at WAYWORD. And you can call us and email us with your language questions or just to discuss cool things that you read. 877-929-9673 or email words@waywordradio.org. Hello, you have a way with words.
Hi, this is Katrina calling from Williamsburg, Virginia.
Hi, Katrina. Welcome.
What can we do for you?
I am calling to find out if using said to describe something that was previously spoken about is proper. For instance, if I told you I was going to the farmer's market to buy vegetables, I could send you a picture of the vegetables with the caption, said vegetables. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Said vegetables.
We use said in this way to refer to, like you said, something that was spoken about in the past. Is this a construction that you're likely to use?
Well, I'm kind of new to social media, and I see see it everywhere. Like, my sister posts stuff, or I'll send stuff to her about things that we've, pictures or something that we've spoken about before, and she'll say dead vegetables. But I don't want to do it and sound crazy, so I was just trying to find out, can I use it, or is it just something that's, like, occurring right now?
Well, it's certainly a legitimate usage. The usage of said to mean the aforementioned thing, or the aforesaid thing, goes back about 700 years in English. So it's really, really, really old. I'm not really aware of it being used in terms of something casual like that, though.
Yeah, it's usually more formal. You definitely see it in legal documents, particularly when there's a discourse or discussion where somebody was mentioned in a previous part of the legal document. But the other part of it is I can see somebody doing it ironically, and certainly the internet abounds in people doing things ironically that we wouldn't otherwise do.
Right.
Yeah, that was my sense of it. I mean, are you trying to be funny when you do it, or you?
I don't know. It's kind of just like a way to describe, like, instead of saying these are the vegetables I told you about earlier, you could just say that vegetables. So I didn't know if it was proper to use it that way.
I like it. It sounds ironic.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a tone mismatch is what it is, and that's a little bit of comedy that we often throw in the language, where in an informal situation we use formal speech, and we all kind of get a little, I don't know, a hormone jolt or something because we realize that there's the match. It makes sense, but the match isn't there.
Right. Okay.
So I wouldn't feel bad about it. In fact, I think it's pretty clever.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're new to social media and you're like, whoa, what are these people doing here?
I was like, can you do that? I don't know if you can do that.
Yes, Martha and Grant say you can.
Yes, yeah. And you need to put an asterisk on every post that says that. Right?
That's right.
Approved by MPGB.
That's right. I'm Grant and Martha, and we approve this message.
Katrina, thanks for your call. Thanks for your call. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So it's a synonym for the aforementioned. And sometimes it takes the article the, and sometimes it doesn't. Here are the said vegetables, or you might also say here are said vegetables. It's just vegetables, that's all right. It's vegetables, okay.
Homemade soap.
But 1300s, we have it in archaic forms of English from the 1300s. That's interesting.
Well, that she's reviving it in social media. Call us with your language question. 877-929-9673. I was reading a text about film appreciation and came across a word I didn't know, which is diegetic. D-I-E-G-E-T-I-C.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it was news to me. It comes from a Greek word that means narrative, and diegetic refers to something that occurs within the story itself. So, for example, if you're watching the Casablanca, and the guy is playing the piano in the bar, that's a diegetic experience, whereas narration or external music is non-diegetic. So when Rocky Balboa is running up the steps in Philadelphia and there's that music blaring, that's not really happening in real life.
Right.
So that's non-diegetic and diegetic.
Perfect. I love having a word for that.
I know, right?
Yeah. Talk to us, words@waywardradio.org.
Hello, you have a way with words.
Hi, my name is Brad Andrews. How are you guys doing today?
All right. Where are you calling from, Brad?
I'm calling from Allen, Texas.
Well, welcome to the show. What can we do for you?
Originally, I'm from Mississippi, and I moved to Texas about 10, 12 years ago. And when I first moved here, I would hear a term all the time that I'm not really used to. It's called T. Jones. I've heard people refer to it as a grandmother or a mother. I just want to know a little bit about the phrase, what exactly does it mean, and where did it come from?
So T. Jones, like T as in Thomas Jones?
Correct.
Where did you hear it? Where did you learn T. Jones?
Originally, when I moved to Texas, I'm from Mississippi originally. Yeah. When I moved here, I would hear it all over Houston. A lot of people said it in Houston. And after that, I moved to Dallas. And again, the phrase, I've heard it all over Texas, but nowhere else.
Yeah, that's what I know about it as well. T. Jones, usually spelled as the letter T and the name Jones, to mean mother, sometimes father, very rarely father, sometimes both parents together, is very specific to Texas and usually centered around Dallas. Most people report it from Dallas, and it's African American usually as well. sometimes pops up in collections of street slang or youth slang, but it's been around since the early 1970s, and it's a kind of big fat origin unknown, unfortunately. We don't know, and I have seen no theories at all on the origins. Was it named after a particular person? Was T the initial of a